revolution starting inside. An instrumental part of Agora worldwide. Agora worldwide. Agora worldwide. Counter economics. Agorist strip. Black market click. Move a quick flip. Can't regulate this. Agorist strip. Black market click. Move a quick flip. Can't regulate this. Agorist.
Agorist.
Agorist. Nexus. Agorist.
Agorist. This is the Agorist Next podcast. I'm Brandon. I've got my great co-host Dag. How you doing, Dag?
I'm doing pretty good, man. How's it going?
Pretty good. Stocking up on those menthols. So,
Hey, man, got to get them in before it hits. Got a freezer full.
We got some great guests on, but yeah, exactly, freezer full. We got some, you threw me off with that one. We got some great guests on, but before we get into it, a huge shout out to our sponsor, Presearch, Decentralized search engine. Don't get spied on. Earn crypto as you search. They've even got dark mode, so get away from Google and these CIA ops. So, with that said, we've got Youse guys with us. 3 out of the 4, and it's great to have them on. They're a fun group, and watching a couple of their episodes, I really like their political stance and their Agora stuff for sure. So it's we just thought it was a good mix, and we wanted to have them on and have a little bit more of a casual episode today. So with that said, we've got Jay, Chris, and Angel with us from Youse guys. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Thank you for asking.
Yes, thank you for having us on. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're very excited to be here. This is our first show with somebody else's podcast. Usually we have people on our podcast, so we're in a unique position. This is our first, my first interview with
I was gonna say
Chris and Jay.
Yeah, Jay and I went on Anarchy Ball's podcast several months ago. Yeah, that was the first time we ever had a guest spot on somebody else's podcast.
Man, I thought I was going to be your first, but
well, you're my first, so.
Oh my.
So, first thing I want to ask is, how did you guys meet, and then, how did you form the Youse Guys podcast?
Which one of you wants to go first?
I can go first, I guess. So
go on.
I met Jay and Chris both at a former job. Chris is still there, but Jay and I have since moved on. And I met Jay. We were talking about the zombie apocalypse, and I asked him if he would help save me from the zombie apocalypse because I needed it, and that's how we became friends and started talking.
I'm pretty sure he was like, hell yeah, I'll save you from the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, all the tools that I had to rescue her from the zombie apocalypse, I lost in a tragic boating accident. So now I just have to rely on hand tools and, garden equipment and shit like that. And then Christopher and I, we met way back, I think in 2000 it's either 2006 or 2008. I can't remember exactly when.
I think it was 2000, like early 2008.
Okay, there we go. And we got we had the funny way we met was like I never talked to him, so we were both using the bathroom, and he was washing his hands, and there was this Italian guy that worked with us. His name was John, and he was going on a date, and Christopher was like giving him a hard time, and then he goes, Annie, what are you gonna do? You're gonna take her on a date, you're gonna say sweet nothings into her, boppity boopy like the from Family Guy, and I laughed so hard I peed on my hands. I was jiggling so much from laughter at the urinal, and I'm like, okay, we have to be friends. That was an excellent hit. And then we both watched Endgame Blueprint for Global Enslavement by Alex Jones, and then we were off the fucking deep end after that, and we were firm friends after that.
Well, yeah. So is that what brought you guys to the Liberty side of things? Was Alex Jones?
You want to go ahead, Christopher?
Yeah, I was gonna say I would say that was definitely probably like an early red pill for both of us for sure. It started me down the path for sure of like questioning the status quo and the system and but yeah, it was the early red pill for me. That was like from that point I was like, I watched that, and him and Jay and I started talking. I was like I hadn't owned any firearms at that time. I was like, I gotta go get a fucking gun.
Right.
What started me in the liberty movement was kind of more like simple than that. I never really wanted somebody to tell me what I needed to do or what I had to do. So I never wanted to tell somebody else what they should do or what they needed to do or what they had to do, because I didn't want to have to be held to that same standard. So, and obviously, I mean, having to force somebody into doing something or say, well, you must do this, it's never really, I don't think anybody wants to make people do certain things, but I just never wanted to have to be held to the same standard. So I just naturally progressed from there.
My journey was a lot longer. I mean, it was because I'm old too, which doesn't help. I was a Marxist when I was in high school. I ran for city mayor in the Youth and Government Day under the Communist Party banner, and the election was fixed against me. And I was relegated to the clerk of courts position, which I abstained from, and I didn't go, and I didn't get the credit for Youth and Government Day in my senior year in high school, which I'm still proud of, I guess. But I started out as a Marxist, and as I worked my way, I was a member of the Socialist Party USA for 3 or 4 years as an adult. And then I started gradually making my way to the middle, and eventually I became a Republican. And mind you, I'm ashamed of all of this, by the way. I became a Republican and then a conservative later on. And then I became a libertarian. And when Michael Malice always comes up in my mind because, when people ask me, like, how'd you become an anarchist? It was like gradually and then suddenly. And that's what happened to me. Because once I became an LP member, and then you start getting into like reading Konkin, for example, and reading these real titans of anarchism, even the ANCOM stuff, where like reading Emma Goldman, for example, and that just radicalized me further to where I was like, all of this is coercive, and I hate every single minute of it, and there's no way I can be a part of a party who does believe in a modicum of coercion. So that just pushed me right over the edge.
Right, yeah, and I've always kind of like naturally had a disdain for authority, and some of that stems from like early, like when I was 13, stems from a bad interaction with the police. Ironically enough, I was like 13, and I was staying over at my best friend's house, and he had like a big front yard, and we always like were goofballs, and we'd camp, like in the summertime, we'd set up tents and camp outside in his yard. And it just so happens like this one night, like ironically enough, we were wearing black clothing, and the neighbors thought we were burglars and called the cops on us. So the entire local police force ascended on us with their guns drawn, screaming at us, making us get down on the ground. So that was my first interaction with the police. And like from that point forward, I was like, yo, fuck these guys. like never again. And it just kind of, it definitely progressed from there. Like I come from like a punk rock background, which unfortunately the punk rock community nowadays is filled with like a bunch of fucking bootlickers and stuff. But yeah, I mean, like that was like my background, kind of always, like I said, just always naturally had like a disdain for authority. And but like I did come from like a traditional, like somewhat left-leaning family, like traditional, like Democrat, like my parents voted Democrat and stuff like that, and that's like how I was like raised and brought up, to be like a Democrat. And it was like like once I broke away from that was like, like I said, like with the early red pill from Alex Jones, and kind of making you break away from that kind of stuff and questioning it, and then kind of like becoming a libertarian rather, and then discovering through that like the Libertarian Party is absolutely fucking toothless, and can accomplish nothing, and then from there to just anarchy.
Cool. How'd you guys find out about Konkin and agorism?
Well, for me, what I could tell you is that I was trying to find out what what fit my personal beliefs. Like, it's kind of, the wonderful thing about anarchism is that there are so many different flavors to choose from. And I know that everybody bickers about what's right and what's wrong. You have people that believe in like, well, the only form of anarchy, it's almost like dealing with religion in a sense, like where you have these different offshoots and we're like, well, no, we need to get back to the source. Well, I mean, no, I mean, are some right or some wrong? It depends on the individual and what you believe. If you're more of a collectivist, then there's certain people that you're definitely not going to want to read or listen to. But for me, it was stumbling upon Konkin because at the time when the Boog movement was still like out in the open on like Facebook and shit, and there were groups that you could watch and you could get involved with, and not that I was ever involved with them, but I paid attention a little bit, and this idea of overthrowing the government and overthrowing the state, let's say. And I have a dear friend of mine who's retired from the armed forces as an Army Ranger. And he told me a long time ago, he says, Uncle Sugar will kill you from outer space. Like, there's no getting around it. And then when I discovered Konkin and counter economics and, subverting the state, by counter economic means, I was like, wow, this really does make sense because it's something so easy to participate in. And Sal the Agorist was such a huge part of my personal journey to identify as an agorist, simply because it's logically consistent all of the time. It's nonviolent. Yeah, self-defense is the only time where it's justified to, I guess, fight back with, reciprocally, or, kind of like, if somebody comes at you with a bat, then you can do what you need to do. But, it's proportionality, I guess what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt far more comfortable with it. And when you put it in this, and when he put it to us this way, when you take $1 and you deprive the state of that revenue, and let's say you spend it someplace where it's taxed, where it's not taxed, well, that's tax money that the state can't use to bomb somebody in Yemen, use a drone strike on them on Pakistan, incarcerate somebody, and with the 2 million people we have under the jail right now, that actually, like, you feel like you can make a difference as an individual. Maybe it's minute, but you're participating in it. And you are not involving yourself in the machine, in the spokes of the state, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. You are making a difference, in that way. So it's, that's love it. How did, I don't know who wants to go next. Chris and Angel, how did you guys get into agorism?
All credit due to Sal the Agorist, man. Like, pretty much the same thing with Jay. Like, even like before we started doing the podcast, like I was, considered myself like an anarchist, but didn't really have. There's a difference between like just kind of like saying you're an anarchist and being able to extrapolate onto that and like the journey to becoming like a principled anarchist. And to me, like agorism is definitely that is the road, with like after reading like the New Libertarian Manifesto by Konkin, like he just outlined, and it's such a short read that like anybody can digest that and then understand the basis, the foundation of the philosophy. And that's really, like I said, a lot of credit goes to Sal, man. Like I started following him on Twitter and just learned so much from him. And like, even over the course of like the past year, because we're actually coming up on a year since I joined the podcast with you guys. And I've grown and learned so much more over the course of that year. It's been a real, like this past year has been like a real learning experience for me in becoming a more principled anarchist, and supporting, the ideals of agorism. So I'm still like relatively new to the idea of agorism, as my path for anarchy. So, but yeah, like I said, all credit due to Sal, man. Like I've learned so much from that guy. He's a wealth of knowledge, and he's cool as hell to talk to as well.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, sorry, Angel.
No, you're fine. I would have to say that my path to agorism because I would like to say that I'm an anarchist without adjectives. So my path to agorism would have to be, I'd have to give credit to Jay and Chris, as well as others in the movement that I have gotten a chance to speak with, like within the past year or so since doing this podcast. I guess I was kind of already naturally an agorist, so to speak, without even thinking about it. Because, you have these free exchanges between you and other people, whether it involves monetary interactions or, face-to-face interactions where you have to conversate with people. And I think naturally I was kind of already there, and I am still learning. I have to be honest, I have not read any books in regards to agorism or anarchy. I'm just learning from people as I speak with them.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's got their own way of going about things. Yeah,
If I could,
go ahead.
it's funny because I kind of had something similar. Like when I was really into economics and, sort of like an ANCAP. And when I learned about agorism and started looking into it, I was just kind of like, oh, like this already kind of fits me pretty well, but you sort of realize that, oh, there's, a little bit of philosophy behind it. And then, yeah, you read the Agorist theory, and it's, less than 200 pages. So, but it sort of rounds that out. So I feel just like kind of similar to what Angel said, where it's just, sometimes it's just kind of, it almost just like comes naturally. You're kind of already doing that, hey, I'm going to do what I want, I'm going to do what I feel is right. And, it's putting a little bit of action behind all the economic theory. I definitely think that like having a little more like the economics like helps, but you really don't need it. Conker makes it really simple.
For sure. But yeah, it is nice to be able to, understand the economics behind it, which, I'll admit is something that like I'm still, reading into and learning about, but it helps. But yeah, like you said, it's not necessary. I feel like agorism is, it almost seems like a natural philosophy. Like it really does. Like it speaks to human nature on a certain level, I believe.
Man, no, I hear you. And, like, I really feel like markets are like natural systems, right? Like when I really started learning like economics, learning about markets, I just like saw so many parallels to like nature and the way nature functions. When there's a niche, something comes in and fills it, and it's sort of the same way that markets work. And it's just, I don't know, I have a hard time putting it into words, but it was just so like, it just fit like a glove, and it just really sort of helped explain the universe. And I do feel like there's a way that we're supposed to treat each other, we're supposed to trade freely. I mean, that's how we advance. That's how we have better lives. And Absolutely. So whenever somebody comes in and interferes with that, it's so frustrating.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I guess now that we know your background, what made you guys just decide? Now, did you guys all come together at the same time to form a podcast, or did somebody start it with somebody else, or what's the background on forming the podcast?
Well, what happened was I did have a podcast that I formed with my my sister, and it was good. The thing is when you start a podcast, and I'm sure that you guys have this experience, just like anybody else who has a show, you really have to dedicate some time to it. It's not something that you can do casually if you want to do it well. And I'm not saying that we do it well, but we do it as well as we possibly can within the constraints that we have, because everybody works, everybody has a job, everybody's got stuff to do. I'm a parent, there's always a lot of stuff that's going on. But if you really believe you want to, I guess make an impact, or at least talk to people, or get, start spreading these ideas of individualism and liberty and voluntary interaction, you really got to dedicate a little bit of time to it. And when I had started one with my sister, Christopher was was a guest that came on because I asked him to join us, and we did like over 2 hours on the
it was 3.5.
3 hours. Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we did like 3 hours. Right. And like my sister, like she thought that she knew everything about audio. And I'm like, you got this fucking MacBook, excuse my language. You got this MacBook that's, as old as Christ was when he was wearing short pants, like a long time ago. And I was like, I don't think, like, we had these condenser microphones. I spent a lot of money on this stuff. And I'm like, they have to be powered. She's like, well, the MacBook will power them. I'm like, no, they're going to need an external. She's like, no, it's going to work fine. So after 3 hours of recording this bang up fucking podcast where we had all of this great information, it sounded like we recorded it inside of a laundromat. It was the audio was terrible. And I'm like, this is not how I wanted to go about it. So I started this, the Use Guys in That podcast. And the audio, I was still having a hard time with it. So Angel was like, I was like, I need help. And I knew that she was really good at this stuff. So she ended up being the sound person. And eventually she took over the show where she's now the boss.
Well, like he kept calling me the sound girl. And I was like, don't call me the sound girl. I'm going to get blamed for the shitty sound. Like I don't want to be blamed for the bad audio. And I was like, oh, if you're going to call me the sound girl, I may as well get this sound right. So then, you know, I figured out, like, I was totally a novice, but I just, you know, watched videos and read some things online and figured out how to do our setup. And, you know, naturally tech savvy. I'm part German, part Irish, so I just get things done.
Yeah, and that's the truth. So, like, she helped out a great deal. And then our other co-host, he was a medic at the time, right? So he was part of the show. We were doing recordings and stuff. We have a great episode where we both got drunk on whiskey and we talked for about 3 hours, and it turned out pretty good. There wasn't a lot of slurring. It started to get a little sloppy at the end, but eventually his company, he was asked voluntarily to go to New York during the height of the pandemic and help transport people with his ambulance company. So he left us for like, I don't know, 8 weeks. And it was just Angel and myself doing the recordings. And I was like, you know, and I asked Christopher to come on as a guest. And I'm like, why am I asking him to come on as a guest? He should just be part of the show. And that's how we got to where we are right now.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Yep.
Cool. So it started with Jay, and it was like kind of your sister, or
it was something. It was a different kind of show. It wasn't exactly like she's a radical anarcha-feminist, which is fine. But we weren't always covering liberty topics. There would be like we did it was more of a variety show, but that nail in the coffin when it was the 3 hours that like we put all this work into this anarchy show to do the different schools of anarchism, and then the audio was terrible. It kind of pushed me over the edge to go ahead on my own and start our own show. And you know,
that's when you got Angel.
That's when we got Angel on board. She went on strike because I did something that she didn't like, and
he messed up the entire laptop.
There we go. So that's why she's in charge. That's why she's the boss, and I just work here. So, it's all worked out really well. Like we've all made this journey kind of together as far as recording. And, you know, I wasn't 100% sure how to get people on. Like, you know, it's not so much about like getting popular or getting famous. I mean, it really, I'm not trying to sound like the Joker, but it's about the message, right? It's about spreading the message of individualism, voluntary interaction, and of course, counter economics and the things that, you know, we all believe together, that we practice together. But, once I started reaching out to people in the community and they started coming on, like it became like what Christopher says when you're, you know, and then Angel said also, that's the cool part is because I'm taking notes while I'm talking to people because they're bringing up stuff that I haven't either read or I haven't heard of or that I need to check out. And you learn as you have people on. And it's been probably one of the best experiences in my life is just talking to people like yourselves and having this wonderful dialogue and conversation with people and learning. It's been tremendous.
Yeah, it's almost better than like, it's way better than college for sure.
By far.
Talking to some of these liberty-minded people.
Hey guys, quick pause here to tell you about our sponsor, Devault Cryptocurrency. Ticker symbol DVT is a low cap coin with a market cap around 900,000. So there could be room for opportunity here. Not financial advice, but we really like this project.
Yeah, the Devault core wallet is one of the best I've ever seen. Very user-friendly, super easy to use with cold staking rewards. So it's like getting interest. They're working on privacy with Terraform, also DeFi to decentralize and replace financial institutions.
So go ahead and check them out over at devault.cc and get you a Devault core wallet today.
Also, be sure to check out the show notes to find exchanges that they are traded on. With that said, let's get back to the show.
Yeah, it's, my wife asked me, she was like, why do you do this? And I was like, I just want liberty, that's my only goal. She's like, you don't want to be famous? No, I just want, the only thing I really want is liberty. I want my kids to be able to live in a free world later on. I guess that's my other question. Jay kind of already answered it, but what drives? I want to know what drives Chris and Angel. If you guys want to, whoever wants to go first.
What drives us as far as to continue to do the show or do the show?
Yeah, or just liberty stuff in general. Probably liberty, but
yeah, I think the major motivation for me is to just be free and to learn, and to have others who are so like, I'm all about doing things the proper way so that the guy who comes after me or the girl who comes after me is able to proceed and go further, and it's easier for them. So I think that's why I continue to do it.
Yeah, for me, definitely, like, I just feel like there isn't enough liberty-minded people in the world, especially not in the modern-day United States. The idea of liberty, like true liberty, I think is frightening to a lot of people because there's a level of responsibility and self-ownership that comes with it, and a lot of people are scared by that. And I guess, I want to help other people along with that journey to teach them that, responsibility and self-ownership and freedom are not, they're not scary. Like going out into the wide open unknown is probably just the idea of freedom, like to truly be free is wonderful to me, man. And it's not just like, it's a state of mind as well. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of like lose their way, because like you have to be free up here, first, among all other things. Like you have to be free. Your state of mind has to be free, and for a lot of people, it's a lot of work to kind of break that programming. And I mean, a lot of that just comes from like our public education system, and we all go through what's the number, Jay? Like 15,000 hours of essentially brainwashing through the public education system. And for a lot of people, like, you have to like break that programming. And if there's anything I can do to contribute to that, to help somebody else, free themselves and to strive towards liberty, there's just not enough people, man. Like to me, that's the frightening thing, is that there isn't enough people that want that. Some people just love to be subservient and love to be told what to do, and I don't want anybody to fucking tell me what to do. I just want to live my life. I want to live it in peace, and that's like, to me, that's like the biggest driving force is just I want a life of peace. And I think like a lot of people, like, anarchy is like a real frightening word, which is why like I do like to use the term agorism, because like a lot of people have no idea what that is. So there's like not any, like preconceptions that people have of it when you first tell them that, whereas if you just come off and straight tell somebody like, oh, I'm an anarchist, like they automatically think like you want to like go out and sling Molotov cocktails and that you're going to be like a violent person. And it's the totally opposite is true. I just want to live my life in peace and be left alone. And if you do that for me, I'll do that for you. It's that simple. So
right.
And yeah, for me, like I said, the podcast is an avenue to which we can, like Jay said, it really is. It's all about the message, man. And if there's any way that, like, if there's anybody that listens to us, and we have, even so much as a positive effect on their life, like that's good enough for me. Even if it's just one or two people, one or two people is better than none. And if we can keep doing this for years and, maybe even, have a larger audience and we can affect more people and bring more people into this movement, then like that to me is winning. So.
Yep. Yeah. And, you bring up something really, you bring up a really good point. Not everybody wants to be free. And the thing about that is that, the master is going to, take care of you and, make you do his work. But and you'll have a roof over your head and some food, but you'll still be in chains, right? So it's kind of crazy because a lot of the slaves back in the 1800s didn't know that they were slaves, and that's kind of, we're living in the same world today, just, not based on completely different things. It's more of like everybody's enslaved now instead of a small group, but and it definitely not as harsh, right? But yeah, it's good. I think the what was it? What year was it? It was 1962 is when they set up the IRS, and 1963 is when they ended slavery. It's something crazy like that, and so it just kind of shows you, they were ending it one way for a small group, but just making it, they were headed in the direction to make to basically make everybody enslaved. So then you had taxes in 1913 and all that. But before I rant on, did you have any questions, Dag? Before I've kind of been hogging, so.
All good. Well, that actually leads me to a question. How do you podcast with so many people? But I just wanted to comment on what Chris was saying, just like you did, about people being afraid of freedom. It's definitely like a thing. There's a book, and my wife got it for me for Christmas, but I haven't read it yet. So I'm talking about it though. But it's called Escape from Freedom. It's like Eric Fromm or something. And it's basically like, that's the gist, as he goes into why people are like afraid of freedom. And at first it is kind of like scary when you're like, oh my God, there's no daddy government that's going to keep me safe. You realize they don't care about you. And then you eventually realize that it's not, while you're still indoctrinated, government feels like almost like, not quite a religion, but it's like, something that's always present and watching you, and when you realize, oh, it's just a gang of people, and it's just something that makes the world a little bit more hazardous, and the best thing you can do is avoid them, and once you realize that, it might be a little scary at first, but then it is just so freeing. The world is your oyster all of a sudden. It's not, oh, am I allowed to do this? It's, I don't know, is it moral? Do you want to do it? And that becomes the question. And it's just such a better way to live, like throughout, like 2020 and the coup. And I'm in Florida, we were a little laxer, but it was like, I did what I wanted, and you're like, oh, are we allowed? Like, what are they saying now? Like, oh, you're allowed to not wear masks outdoors, and it's like, we were wearing masks outdoors. I mean, I wasn't even wearing them indoors. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, this whole pandemic, like, I haven't been wearing a mask, like, inside work, like, because my bosses are pretty cool, and they're like, no, if you want to wear one, wear one. If you don't. And I'm like, that's cool. So like this whole time I haven't been wearing it, and like I refuse to go to the store. I go to 2 stores, which I have to go to the UPS store for my job from time to time. And I just go in there and I throw my package at them and I walk out the door, and it says wear a mask, but they never tell me not to come back in. And I go there, a couple of times a week, and they know who I am. So, I mean, and then the little mini mart down the street from me, I always go in there without a mask and have this whole time, and nobody said anything to me. So like, and then I just have my groceries delivered because I'm like, I'm not dealing with it. Like, I'm not going to the store. Like, I found a loophole, and that's what I stuck with.
Yeah. Very good.
Nice. Yeah. It's crazy. Some states are really, really, like, masks are mandatory. I don't know exactly how Ohio was, but yeah, like, I mean, California was really strict. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Ohio was pretty rough.
Yeah.
They had a curfew and shit, right?
We did, like, not that anybody paid attention. I'm going to give you guys a great example of, first of all, we had a friend of ours from Portland. Well, not Portland. He's in Oregon, deep behind enemy lines. And shout out to our friend, Comrade Klaus, wonderful guy. And he was talking to us about what was going on over there. And he brought up a great point with, like, being an insurrectionist now is like having dinner with your family on Easter. It's seeing your family on, like, Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever it is that you do. You know what I mean? Like having Sunday dinner, spaghetti and meatballs with people that you love is now an act of insurrection. So that tells you a lot about where we went. And this is a great thing that Christopher's in a band called the Negative One, and they play punk rock. So there's a place which shall not be mentioned that they played at, and we walked in there. It was Angel, Brian, and myself going to the show, and there were 3 bands there. And we walked in there. Not only were people not distancing, there was not a fucking mask to be found. There were people that were smoking. I don't know what they were smoking, but there was something lit in their mouths. I'm not going to say what it was because I'm not 100% sure. But everybody was drinking and having a good time, and the bands were playing, like, really great music. And it was like walking back into America in 2019, which I know we shouldn't be really idolizing because that wasn't that fantastic, but a comparison to the totalitarian nature that this communist fuck down in Columbus is, arbitrarily creating health orders to say, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. It was so wonderful to see. And, for that brief amount of time that we were at the punk rock show, we forgot about all that bullshit. We were just in the moment, enjoying the music. And that's kind of me. That to me is really what punk rock was supposed to be about. Is this, hang the rules, fuck you and fuck authority. We're gonna have a good time here. There was nobody told anybody. There was the fuzz didn't show up. There was no problem. Nobody got into a fight. It was great. We were just having a good time. And I kept telling myself, and we talked about this before, the longer this goes on, the more, like in Prohibition, you had speakeasies for places to go booze. You're going to have speakeasies for people to come and enjoy a live show and enjoy live music, because you don't realize how much you love it till you can't participate in it. And and for the artists that create the music for us, for them not to be able to, indulge the audience in their craft and be able to share their art with the people is a real shitty thing. And that's not exactly a world that I want to live in. But yeah, it was draconian for a while. They had a curfew. Like, I don't even know what it was because none of us listened. We still did whatever we wanted to.
I paid zero attention to it.
Right.
Nice.
Exactly. And
As you should.
Dude, the other day, like you said about, you don't have to wear a mask outside. I don't fucking remember. Like,
never wore a mask outside. As a matter of fact, I remember making fun of people for doing so.
Right. Right.
Maybe not necessarily to their face, but
like laughing, but like, oh my God, you're completely stupid. Like I walk my dog every day for 1.5 miles in the morning. I never wore a fucking mask. The Rona's going to get you while I'm out walking the dog in the park. Are you out of your fucking mind? I mean, really, and then like you go to the restaurants and stuff and you walk in there and then you sit down in a booth and they got, somebody coughing 6 feet away from you. But between the booths, there's this plexiglass like you're at a hockey game, and it's just in one particular area. So like the Rona, the virus gets up to the edge and then is looking at you and is like, well, fuck, I can't go over this edge because this is the end. Like the Rona cannot cross it. Like the mental gymnastics that went on during this thing were tremendous. I mean, people have to be commended for the level of stupidity that we stooped to. Like it is par excellence. The idea, you know what I mean? It's just the stupidity we engaged in was phenomenal. And fortunately, it looks like it's coming to a close, which I am totally delighted for. But the longer it would have went on, the more we would have continued to do whatever we wanted. It's kind of like my ex-brother-in-law used to say this every time somebody would give him a hard time about smoking reefer. And he would be like, marijuana's illegal? He's like, I've been able to get it so easily for so long. What are you talking about? I mean, just completely ignore, there's something really special about your refusal to acknowledge their authority. Like you can pass all the laws you want. You can try to tell people what to do. I'm going to continue to do whatever I want. And I'm going to associate like the idea that you don't see your family because the government tells you to is so un-American and so contrary to what I at least thought used to be the revolutionary spirit of Americans. We used to be those kind of people who'd be like, who the fuck are you to tell me anything? And now it's just they bend the knee. We've come full circle. And that part of me, that really eats me up. That really pisses me off. But the fact that going to a holiday dinner is now an act of insurrection, I guess that there are more anarchists than they realize that are out there now.
Dude, that's what I said at Thanksgiving. I was like, this is going to be the most agorist Thanksgiving ever. The amount of people breaking these fucking laws to go have dinner, you know? So now we just got to get them to realize that's what's happening.
Yes.
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say around the holidays and that, you know, pretty lucky that we have younger neighbors and they kind of mind their own business in my area. So but I was slightly concerned that somebody might call the police on me and then, you know, somebody might like get killed or my dog might get shot. So I was a little worried about that at first, but I mean, nobody called. So it worked out okay.
It's unfortunate it has to be a concern.
Yeah.
Isn't that right? Like the fact that Americans, they're snitching, like the worst thing you how about like Christopher and I talked about this, and I'm sorry to get off topic a little bit, but we talked about the so-called insurrection. You mean the riot on January 6th with a bunch of angry Republicans, where the one kid turned in his own father, which to me is the ultimate act of fucking treason that's unforgivable. Is when you it's not like he was a pedophile, okay? He wasn't abusing children. You turned in your dad for getting into a riot with the federal property, like, and they hailed him as a hero. There is something like, I don't believe in a hell, but that kid better hope that I'm right and that there isn't one, because if there is one, that son of a bitch is headed right there, because that is atrocious. It is unforgivable. Snitching on your family or your neighbors, it is just unforgivable. And I hate that now we have almost like an East German style Stasi, where your neighbors could potentially be agents of the state just by watching what you're doing and reporting it. It is incredibly troubling, and it's something that we need. Like, there needs to be. I mean, I'm not calling for any kind of action, but I mean, there has to be. I mean, we got to do something about that. At least masking what we're doing, or making sure that people don't know what we're up to. But at least calling it out. At least calling it out and saying, how dare you turn on your own neighbors? Because if you'll
make
do
snitches
that,
uncomfortable.
Yeah,
very uncomfortable.
Yeah,
it's just
definitely make that a thing. Right on, man.
Right. I'm gonna give you some metaphorical stitches.
That's the thing too. It's a lot of this stuff. You know, I'm not trying to say we're as bad as Nazi Germany, but there's definitely comparisons that that you can't overlook. So I mean, they're there, and
there's definitely parallels you can draw for sure.
I mean, they want to identify people who don't get vaccines and vice versa, and create like this caste system. And me and Dad talked about, I think, which in-game episode was it? 4 or 5? One of the in-game episodes that we did. We talk about the 10 stages of genocide, and in it, one of them is dehumanization. And they're going to start dehumanizing the people who don't get vaccinated. They want everybody to die from this disease. They're the problem. And when you see, I forget how many of these 10 stages of genocide that there were, but there were a lot of boxes checked off. And, so it's definitely a,
Look at Biden's tweet like yesterday or whatever. You
God.
either get the vaccine or you wear the mask. So it's like, you get the vaccine or we're going to dehumanize you by making you wear a fucking muzzle. You know?
Well,
yeah, fucking absurd.
The problem that I have, there's so much to unpack with that, but let's just say this. If enough people get the vaccine, and again, I don't have a stance on it. Like, again, that's your body, your choice. You do whatever you want 100. To do. Whatever you want to do. I know there's some people that feel very strongly one way or the other. I don't really care. It's your problem, not mine. But with that being the case, if enough people have already gotten it, then what the hell are you worried about the ones who haven't? Because now here's the thing. Let's say it was as bad as they made it sound back in March of 2020, let's say, where we didn't know if it was 50% of the people were going to die, 75% or nobody. Like, we didn't know really what was going to happen because the media was hyping it. The state was really hyping it. But let's just say that it's something that's a little bit more deadly than what we're dealing with right now. Okay. So if you choose to do nothing, right, and your neighbors got vaccinated or whatever, you're assuming responsibility over the result that will happen to you. You could not get it. You could be asymptomatic. You could get slightly ill, or you could fucking die. Right? Those are the avenues that will that are potentially there for you to experience. Well, if you got vaccinated, like Joe Biden got vaccinated, well, then, Joe, don't worry about it. I mean, he probably doesn't even remember doing it because he has dementia. That's aside. But seriously, like, to tell somebody, like, you're not my father, that's an ultimatum. That's a threatening ultimatum. Either you do this or I'm going to make you wear this. Well, no, Mr. Joe Biden, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want. And you can go cry about it if you don't like it. First of all, he doesn't have if we're going to play the Constitution game, he doesn't have the authority. The federal government doesn't have the authority to enact a federal mandate. Remember, we already did this. They threatened it, but they couldn't do it because the framework doesn't exist since we're playing this game that they're playing, right? We're just going to go ahead and play along and pretend like that piece of paper matters. So, yeah, they don't have the authority to do that. And, is it Dag, do you live down in Florida?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, nobody gives a shit down in Florida. Like, everybody's having a great time. Like, so it is a toothless threat, but I don't like the way you talk. Like, you're not my parent. You don't get to, or else. Like, go fuck yourself. Like, that's the end of it. That's the end of the discussion. But yeah, that was a disgusting tweet. Like,
dude, the tone behind it was like unexpected, really. Like Brandon told me about it last night. And I was like, what? Like, no. Like, he didn't say that. That's insane. Or whoever does his Twitter said it, I doubt he knows how to turn the computer on.
No, it's probably Miss Piggy, Kamala Harris, the one who's doing it.
Right.
His handler.
Yeah.
I just think it's
He's
funny
like,
that
"Where am
all of this coronavirus restrictions and all that are supposedly being uplifted after the claims about Dr. Fauci funding the coronavirus research and knowing about the coronavirus like previously. And so now, all of a sudden, it's okay to go outside without a mask. Like, I find it funny, the connections. That's all.
So, me and Dak, we had in game 6, right? It's hard to keep track.
Yeah, that was most recent.
Yeah, eventually we'll get to the actual end game, but we're kind of building up to it, and we talked about what's next, because of course they have stuff in store for us, and it looks like environmental lockdowns. Like, hey, we have to save the planet. Let's lock down. Where do you guys see this heading?
Well, you kind of talked about this the other day, and I think that I guess I'm trying to be optimistic about it. I believe that the more they push, I think you'll get pushed back. It's taken a while for people to get their balls back, but they're starting to, because over a year of this shit, they're finally like, okay, I'm sick of this. Like, I'm not going to doubt, basically we're going to use Rage Against the Machine's words, which they don't believe in anymore, which is fuck you. I won't do what you tell me. I think that the more that we go in this direction, and we talked about inflation being another issue, and I know that's not so much, it has ties to the environmental thing, but I think that the more, like, let's say we go with that route with the environmental lockdown, I think that you're going to see a fracturing of the union, because I think that there's going to be enough actors who are going to be like, we're not living like this. Like, you're not going to dictate to us how we're going to live our lives anymore. You've been doing it for far too long. But I think for a lot of people, this might, maybe not a lot, but I think maybe 10%, this was a huge wake-up call. This was a huge reveal for a lot of people who may have been, magic skycloth waving people and people who believe in the magic piece of paper, realizing that they have no rights, that their rights are subject to being, used as toilet paper at any given point when any given crisis is created. So I think that we might be seeing the beginning of a fracturing of the union, which I'm all for, because the only thing that holds this entire thing together really is the greenback, McDonald's, Target, and Walmart, because you're already ignoring the several different cultures that exist in this country. You cannot compare, LA County to people who live in West Virginia. There might, like West Virginia, like I always joke, and this is not a pejorative. West Virginia for me is like the Afghanistan of America. Those are people that if you don't fuck with them, they'll leave you alone. But if you go down there looking for trouble, they will fuck you up. They do whatever they want. They live in their hollers. They're very nice people. Appalachian people are very cool. But if you go down there looking for trouble, believe me, you'll find it. Well, those two people, culturally speaking, they have nothing in common. You have a lot of individualism in that part of the world in Appalachia, and you have a lot of, the hive mentality, these idiots that are out on the left coast or in the big cities like in New York or in, Massachusetts or whatever, in Boston. I know that there's outliers. We have listeners in these areas, and I feel terrible for them because there are listeners behind enemy lines. But I believe that, apart from those things that tie us together, there's going to be a fracturing, because there's those of us who want to live freely and want to do whatever they want. Like, what was it? The part of the Great Reset, I wish Brian was here because he could talk about it, was about how you'll own nothing and you'll be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe for some of you that works, but that doesn't work for a lot of us where we live. And I know down in Florida, we have more culturally in common with Floridians than we do with people from San Francisco, Marin County. I mean, we might as well be two different countries. So that's where I personally, and I'm an advocate for it. I think it's great. I strong advocacy for decentralization and regionalism, where because we talk about gun culture a lot on our show. Well, once again, compare Ohio's gun culture where we live, even in Northeast Ohio, which has its pockets of real strong left-wing, ideologues, such as like Youngstown or in Cleveland or in Canton or in Akron. But outside of that, these are just regular Midwestern folk that they like guns and they like low taxes and they don't want to be bothered. I think that you'll find that that's more of, I guess that's not the exception, but the rule across the fruited plain, at least until you get to these pockets of massive statism and people who worship the government and want to be told what to do and do not want to live as free individuals. They want people to make the choices for them. Good. Push harder. I hope they push harder, because maybe we'll finally start waking up more and more people and get them on that road to radicalize them. And they already know that you can radicalize people very quickly when it comes to gun control, because everybody gets worked up about that. That's not, a red flag waving communist, like a member of the Marxist Leninist party. Like, most people do not like that sort of thing, no matter how they try to, I guess manipulate the statistics to say, oh, most Americans favor this. Well, that's bullshit. That we all know that if they did, it would already passed. Okay. It hasn't happened, no matter how many schools they decide to shoot up. So they know that they can't play that game. Now they're going to try this. They've always been trying to push the environmental angle. It's better for the planet, this, that, and the other thing. Well, I mean, they're not even looking at the actors that contribute to the most polluting the world in general, which is our preferred trading partner, which is the Communist People's Republic of China and the folks in India. Those two countries are the greatest contributors to shit that's going into our atmosphere. That the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, that a lot of that garbage comes from them. But they're not looking at those actors. They're trying to get people like you and I who are already being pushed to the wall. And like I said, go ahead, push harder, see what happens. Maybe we'll finally get that divorce that we've been longing for so long. But that's my take.
I don't know. I think in the long run, eventually, like, you have all of these like streaming services, whether it be Hulu and Netflix and, others along those lines. And then, like, obviously you have your YouTubes and, the derivatives of YouTubes as well. But I think they're eventually losing the argument as far as like being able to, I did see them talking about the coronavirus and people not working and how the effect on the environment, had changed. I don't remember exactly. I read like the title and I didn't click on it because I'm like, okay. And I only saw like a couple of articles, and I wonder why they didn't blast that more, because they really don't care about the environment.
Yeah.
They cared more about scaring the shit out of everybody that you're going to kill your grandparents and you better just stay at home, than they cared about the environment getting better. And I think like with all of these different streaming services, you're not going to get the mainstream propaganda, and it'll probably filter into those eventually, but they're not there right now. So they're kind of losing their argument. And I think for the younger generation who has grown up on the internet and streaming, which is why they want to try to put their tentacles into the internet and all of these other areas, because they know they're losing the argument. The propaganda machine isn't as strong as what it used to be, in my opinion.
I think that's a great point. About like everybody likes to, crap on the younger generations, right? But there is some truth to the fact that they have such a variety and choice of content compared like to what we had. I had cable, I had a whole 40 channels, and of course the internet wasn't much, back then. And it's like you couldn't avoid propaganda or just commercials. I mean, it sickens me to think about how many hours of commercials I've watched over the course of my life since, until I stopped watching TV, and it's like,
Sure.
This is great. But yeah, man, it's, I really have a lot of hope, hopefully, and I try to be optimistic, that yeah, with the younger generations, they can hopefully avoid a lot of the propaganda that a lot of us and God, our parents and stuff were subjected to.
All right, let's take a quick second to shout out Agorist Acres Seeds. AgoristAcres.com stocks a variety of seeds for your garden or homestead. They also have really cool packaging instead of those silly paper envelopes.
Buy seeds with crypto, support the counter economy, and become self-sustaining today. Agorist Acres offers fast shipping so you can get started right away.
Make sure you use code Nexus10 at the checkout for 10% off of your orders. Also, they will donate a portion of the sale to Agorist Nexus, helping to bring you all the great content you expect. And all right, let's get on with it.
Yeah, well said.
I think their attention spans are also vastly different, to where like they kind of get bored of sitting in front of the television watching a program, and then they have to wait for the commercials, because they probably grew up on watching YouTube a little bit prior to like they made the ads a requirement, and then you have to skip the ads and all of that. Like back when YouTube didn't have ads, like they grew up watching things on YouTube, videos, instant gratification at demand, and if it's not fast enough, they tune out. And I think that that's another key into the propaganda machine, where they have too much and they're like, this is boring. You already said that. And they just move on.
I'm going to give them a little bit of credit because at least we didn't elect FDR to 3 terms, right? But
yeah, no kidding, dude.
Right.
That's a fair point.
The greatest generation was so great. They elected that lipstick communist. Oh,
I know. He put the Japanese in camps and confiscated gold and forced the Japanese into war. Like, this guy was just, unbelievable. Bailouts for corporations and massive debt. Like probably one of the worst. Of course, the list is probably like Woodrow Wilson #1.
Absolutely.
But, I don't think anybody's going to debate that.
Roosevelt, Lincoln.
But then you've got like FDR has to be #2 or #3, and then you've got Lincoln and a couple of these other ones. But
sure, and a lot of people forget. You brought up FDR. This New Deal horseshit that he came up with. That wasn't what got the country out of the Depression. What got the country out of the Depression was the war machine. Was putting everybody back to work, making munitions and airplanes and rifles and bullets and all the other stuff that was needed to fuel the war machine that fought Japan and Germany. It wasn't the New Deal. The New Deal did fuck all nothing for anybody. It was putting asses back to work in the plants that were making weapons of war. And I think that that's a fact that's often missed. And of course, that's not part of the mythology that is evolved around our friend with polio.
Man, that's funny you say that. I'm sorry, I gotta say, like, what I was actually taught was that it was World War II that got us out of the Great Depression. But I've actually heard a lot of really convincing arguments. Like Bob Murphy does a lot of like breakdowns of it that are pretty simple, of like where they disagree that it was actually, like, they say that it was getting out of the war that actually brought back real jobs, and got us out of the Depression. But I don't know. Like I said, I don't know.
That's an interesting take. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. But Bob Murphy, I just love him. So
right on.
But he does some real good little bits on that. But it's interesting, and yeah, I definitely think that FDR and the New Deal, I think that it extended, the Great Depression for something like 10 years.
No question.
Of course, if they just don't do anything, that's like the best thing that the government could possibly do. By the time you even know you're in like a recession or depression, typically they're on the way out of it. But yeah, they just they just have to get their fingers in there and mess things up.
Yep.
Right. I mean, like on top of the fact that the New Deal just completely reeks of fascism. So
yeah.
To boot,
and yeah, just the way that people just pine over FDR, it's really sickening. But it's like I don't know. That's really just my cue to not waste any more time on that person.
That's
right.
That's
right.
really good. I like that.
I get into an argument with my grandma almost every time I see her because she just loves FDR, and he got us out of he won the war, and he did all this great stuff, and I'm like, look, like, you can't be a person if you throw an entire race into camps, like people didn't like Hitler for it, so I don't know why they like FDR, but and of course there wasn't like, there was still death, like I think 1,800 people died from malnutrition and some getting sick in these camps. So it wasn't the best conditions either.
No, definitely not.
No, it's not. And then the famous quote by Robert Higgs when he talks about firebombing large German and Japanese cities, and then talking about dropping nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There, like I know that we're all familiar with Austin Peterson and the ridiculous horseshit that comes out of his mouth defending the use of atomic weapons. And, when it comes specifically to people who had nothing to do with the war, meaning young children who are absolutely blameless when it comes to the stupidity of their fucking government, along with, German kids, like, they weren't running the camps. They weren't the SS. Like, give me a fucking break. Like, you can't, if somebody did that to Cleveland or to Omaha, the Americans would be rightfully up in arms, like, why the fuck is this happening? You know what I mean? But it's okay in the context of they're the bad guys and we're the good guys. Well, no, there definitely were bad guys. We were allied to one of them. His name was Joseph Stalin, and we were friends with him, and we ran supplies to the port of Archangel in the Soviet Union to make sure that he could keep fighting the Nazis. So we were definitely friends with somebody who was really awful too. So, and that's quite often forgotten, just like when we talked about the other day, when they talk about the Nazi invasion of Poland. Well, it's often forgotten that there was an invasion that came from the East as well. And they had a parade together after they conquered Poland. But that's not a convenient thing to talk about with these people.
Yeah, they pretty much split Poland right down the middle, if I remember right.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, you get 50%, I get 50%, and
the spoils.
Yeah, the Soviets were just as bad, in my opinion. I mean, they I think Stalin, they on record killed 20 million people and threw everyone threw a lot of people into Siberia, which of course a lot of people froze to death and whatnot, but.
Yep.
But yeah, want to switch gears to, what does you guys have planned? What do you guys have planned for the future? What do you hope to achieve? I know Liberty's, definitely part of it, and
sure.
But where do you guys see yourselves later on?
Well, we're actually starting to branch out. So we started a BitChute exclusive called The Lounge, because we're not, we wanted to talk about more pop culture stuff and kind of, put the brakes on the anger machine that comes out of us, because we get really upset when we record, because we're usually covering the news and the dumb shit that the stupid government does all the time. So we have a separate episode that's exclusive on BitChute, where we're talking like the first episode we talked about like record collection, and I brought out some of like the LPs that I have that are exclusives and box sets and stuff like that. And we have another episode they're going to be recording where Chris is going to be sharing a collection that he has with the audience, because it's nice to take a break from that once, at least for an episode that's completely separate from what we normally do. As far as the regular service is concerned, I mean, we just listen. I'm an email machine. I just try to email everybody and their brother to try to get them on our show so that we could talk to them, so we can exchange ideas. Once again, we had Sal the Agorist on our show for the last episode. So we had two great agorists in a row for the last 2 weeks, which was really, really cool. We'll keep reaching out and talking to people. Hopefully we're looking to grow the audience. We're always asking for people to participate. We do have our friends come on that we've met as the show has grown, because in my opinion, if you have a platform and you can't share it with your friends, then I don't know exactly why you wouldn't do that. For people, like, we've always been very open with people. If they want to come on and talk, if they've got an interesting topic that they want to bring up, we're always very open with them coming on. And we've had our friends come on and talk, and it's been a wonderful experience listening to them and getting a different perspective. People that come with some really hardcore preparation. So I'd love to get Scott Horton back on to talk about the new book that he put out, because we talked about Afghanistan with him the first time that he was on. I tried reaching out. You guys familiar with the Center for Stateless Society? You guys familiar with them?
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds familiar. What do they do?
They've got a bunch of articles and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're more of a left-wing market anarchist website. Well, I reached out to them, and they don't really want to hang out with us, because we had Keith Preston on our show, because he's talked to nationalist anarchists, which, again, I don't agree with that point of view, but Keith Preston has been a wealth of knowledge as far as the depth of his understanding of the various movements of anarchism, and it's off the top of his head. Like, you could tell he doesn't prepare notes, but they didn't want to work with us, which was kind of disappointing, because I was a fan of their work. I mean, I don't have a problem with them, but to discriminate against us because we had somebody on that they didn't like, who did a lot for our show. He's been one of the most popular guests that we've had on, and people have really, like, in fact, we had a fan write in to please ask him to come back on to talk about a specific topic that they wanted to hear him talk on. And I thought that was pretty rad. But the Center for Stateless Society obviously didn't think that was very cool. So I was a little bit disappointed about that. But we'll keep reaching out to people and try to have them come on, just grow the brand, and make as many friends as possible in the Liberty community, like we're doing right now with you folks, which we're delighted to do. The more the merrier. I think that it's wonderful. So that's what we hope, I think, to do as the show moves on.
We've also.
Yeah, man, you guys just need to have Dag on, next week, and
I'd be glad to. That's not a problem.
And so we've also discussed the possibility, like, if we can get enough of an audience, of like doing occasional like live stream shows as well. So we've discussed that. So that's like another thing in the chamber there, a possibility for the future. Mm-hmm. And like Jay said, with our the lounge, we were talking about like pop culture stuff. Like, my inspiration, for us doing that was definitely like Eric July. Because I was talking to him like how, if we do something like this where we talk about like lighter subjects and have like, because like I was introduced to Eric July through his because like I'm a comic book nerd and stuff like that. So like that's how I discovered him. I stumbled upon him on YouTube before I ever even knew he was like an ANCAP type. I stumbled across his like critique videos on comic books and stuff. So I was like talking to Jay that like, hey, if we, branch out and do like some, like a series with like, like lighter pop culture subjects, like we might be able to snag a few outliers, you know, and make them audience members and have them stumble upon our content that way, and then discover, you know, our other stuff. And just another avenue to kind of, you know, get the hooks out there.
Yeah, I like it. It's nice because with something like that, you know, like you said, you can when you have something that's a strictly Liberty podcast or whatever, like you're talking to Liberty people, like, you know, and when you have something like that where you might be able to get people, or maybe just like a foot in the door, but you know, they like what you're saying otherwise. And also what you said earlier about just the anger machine, you know, it can be nice to have a break.
Sure. For sure.
I want to ask real quick, what's it like doing a podcast with so many people? Because like, even when it's just me and Brandon on a show, like we step all over each other. So like, I have to imagine a podcast with like 4 people can be tough. Do you have any thoughts on that?
You know something? I think, you know, when we had Pete Quinones on, he was like, "This is the most people that I've had that I've been on with at the same time," because there was, I guess, what was it? There 5 of us at the same time. Well, you know, there's a lot of show prep, I would say, you know, where we, you know, discuss what we're going to be discussing. And yeah, you're inevitably going to step on somebody because there's a little bit of a lag and there's a little bit of a delay. Or like our co-host that's not with us right now, he gets extremely fired up and he gets really loud. And sometimes you're trying to talk, he'll keep talking because he's so excited, which is great. I mean, you just can't. My advice to anybody who has a larger group, you know, that just don't get upset when it happens. It's really not, nobody's doing it to be a dick and like, "Oh, I'm going to talk over you, Chris, take that." No, that's not what's happening. It just happens. I do think that it works pretty well with the group that we have. Like, I think it's like we do our best that if somebody is, you know, trying to say something, that you know, shut up for a minute and let them have the floor. You know what I mean? To try to, as much as possible. Sometimes, you know, maybe somebody doesn't have a lot to say, or, you know, when we've had guests on, and I'm sure this probably happens to a lot of hosts, probably maybe, you know, potentially yourselves, is when you do have a guest on, you ask the question. It's wonderful when they're the driver and they're, you know, pushing the conversation because they're answering the questions, or they're you know, they're not taking control, so to speak, because I don't even want to think, I think that's an appropriate word to use, but they are driving the conversation to where you're listening and learning. So, and if anybody has a question, and that's the cool thing about having videos, you see if somebody's getting close to their microphone, like they have something to say, like, okay, well, you know, you're going to be quiet for a minute because clearly they want to ask something. So I think it works out pretty well. I mean, that's just my opinion.
We have a good group dynamic. I mean,
like,
just
you get like a rhythm down.
Yeah, for sure. Like, there's definitely like a rhythm down, and I mean, just like I've known both Jay and Angel for years and years. So, and I mean, we like, even before we did a pot, like we had always, like, Jay and I had always been like every time we'd have a conversation and get fired up, we like, "God damn it, we should have recorded that, man. Like, we should just record our conversations. Like, the conversations we have are so great. We should just record that shit. People would probably listen to it." And I guess that was kind of like the you know, the progenitor for the idea of doing a podcast, is just like we'd have conversations and we like just nonstop talking about stuff for hours on end. And it was like, God, we should have recorded that. Like, we should have like, I can't tell you how many times that we'd
record it like the NSA, you know.
Just hit them up. They got a copy. You have your phone in your pocket. They got the whole thing, man.
Where's my copy, man? Where's my copy?
You owe me a copy. If you're gonna record it, you at least owe me a copy.
That's funny.
That's good.
I always try to wait for the silence in between, and then try to like shoot in there, because I'm kind of quiet on the show. I mean, I do my best to like talk more, but I'm naturally a quiet person in general, and I'm working on that to try and like engage more and say more things, because I listen a lot and I think a lot, and sometimes I don't always say what I'm thinking. So I kind of wait for that quick silence enough to where I can be like, "Hey," and then I realize I can go at that point. So that's what I kind of do. I judge it that way.
That's good. And then you're just ensuring there's no dead air, so it's an important role.
Yep. And then sometimes too, like I'm watching, you know, everybody else talk, and then I see that maybe like Brian might want to say something or Chris might want to say something. I'm like, "Hey, did you have something that you wanted to say?" And then they can go ahead and make their point at that point.
Yeah, for how much chaos there is, how much chaos there could be with 4 people. You guys seem to do a really good job, and yeah, maybe video would help me and Dag. I mean, I think we're getting better, but I'm really, that was my main job for a while is interrupting them. So.
Yeah, it's all good. I mean,
were you trying to say something, Dag? See, I just interrupted you.
You gotta use the raise your hand function. Like, I need to talk.
I've thought about that. I've never even tried it. I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll get it figured out. Oh, mercy. Yeah, this is definitely the most people I've ever been. I think I've been on a podcast with a total of 4 people before. So this one 5. This is a new record. But it hasn't been bad. It's been pretty smooth.
I thought so as well.
Yeah.
I was hoping for 6, but
Yeah.
Next time.
Yeah, he's in the O now. And I'm going to let him.
Don't worry, we'll browbeat him for you later.
Good, thanks. I'd expect nothing less.
He's like, he's definitely like my little brother, and I'm going to definitely know that he's disappointed me a little bit, and I'm a little bit hurt about it. So
let him know that we're disappointed in him.
Will do. It shall be passed along.
I texted him and I'm like, "Are you gonna come on the show? Like, we're guests. We were invited." He's like, "No, I'm not gonna be able to make it." And I was like, "Son of a bitch."
He wrote you back?
Yeah, he wrote me back. I texted him.
God damn it! Why didn't he respond to the fucking group chat? That's why we have the group chat.
Because we are group chatting all day, so he's probably like, "Oh, that's nothing important. I'll read it later."
Oh yeah, so we're being ignored. You hear that, Christopher?
Right. We're
just chopped liver, man.
Fucking mincemeat, I guess.
Sad. Very sad. Many such cases.
Well, I understand that mentality because sometimes I'm like, "Oh, I'll get this later." So I get it. That's why I sent him a direct text message. Plus, too, I'm the boss, right? So he's got to listen to me.
There's no arguments for me. I still want to be on the show, lady. So you do what you got to do.
So, where can everybody find you guys? I know that. Do you guys have your own website, or do you plan on it? Or
we do. Yes, we do. It's useguyspod.com. And you can get at us there. It's info@useguyspod.com. The main email that we check is useguysinThat@gmail.com. And across Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, it's @useguyspod. You can also find us on BitChute. Like I said, we have an exclusive that we started. That's Christopher's brainchild, which is The Lounge. And also our episodes are there, as well as on YouTube. We started the BitChute because just in case we got thrown off of YouTube, it would be great to try to make sure that there's an alternative platform for those of the audience that want to check out the show, that they're not limited to just audio and the YouTube channel. They can go to BitChute and check us out there. So I think that's all the places that we have. A blog that needs to be updated in a very, very bad way. That's another thing that Brian was supposed to get involved. He was very fired up the other day. Now I don't know, I got to talk to him about it, make sure that he follows through with the blog. But we got a blog there, and we have suggested reading materials and links to different websites. So if you're interested in that, please check it out. And you can catch us across all podcatchers. Podbean is the one that is our main server, but we're on iTunes and Spotify, Deezer, all, like I said, Amazon. You can listen to us there. Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all that stuff. You can find us just about anywhere.
And then my Twitter handle is @angel_soundgirl. And then on Twitter, we're @useguyspod.
Mm-hmm. And I think, Chris, you've got your own Twitter too, right? And I've seen Jay's. I think both of you guys have your own.
Yeah, mine. You can find my Twitter handle. It's @thebloodletting. So yeah, you can find my personal Twitter on there. It's just shit posting. So.
Nice.
Yeah,
let it flow, right?
No,
right.
I mean, Christopher's definitely worth a follow. All of us are definitely worth the follow. I mean, I'm definitely not going to say, "Nah, you shouldn't." You probably shouldn't. Mine is @JAYCOLEAU, and I don't shit post. I usually I try not to anyway. But it's a wonderful platform. It's a wonderful health site. I know that we complain about it, but I do enjoy it immensely. So if you want to find us there, and you can find all of our Twitter handles also on our website, useguyspod.com, down at the bottom of the page.
Yeah, and if you try to get me on Twitter, if I don't respond to you, I will eventually. I just don't check it that much. I don't know.
I was gonna say,
I pop in and out.
Jay and I are far more active on Twitter than
Definitely.
and than all the rest of us in the group. So we're always on there. So if anybody shoots us a DM on there, we're typically pretty quick to respond.
Sweet.
Did you have any quotes, Doug?
I think I had another Roderick Long quote, but we just did one from him the other day.
Right.
Find it.
There's I know an Emma Goldman quote. Let me see. Yeah.
Ooh, Emma Goldman today.
Yeah, usually we finish up with a quote, but yeah, we've if you guys got a quote, shoot it out. Well,
yeah, our guests have been doing pretty good jobs with quotes recently. I've been liking letting them do it.
yeah, they've been covering our asses for sure.
Yeah.
I'd be delighted to if you would like. I referenced one earlier, and it's one of the most wonderful quotes that I think that you can find. I mean, don't get me wrong. Emma Goldman is literally gold. She's a wonderful woman, quite the revolutionary.
Uh-huh.
I love her to death. But this one again is from Robert Higgs. So it's anarchists did not try to carry out genocide against Armenians in Turkey. They did not deliberately starve millions of Ukrainians. They did not create a system of death camps to kill Jews, Gypsies, and Slavs in Europe. They did not firebomb scores of large German and Japanese cities and drop nuclear bombs on 2 of them. They did not carry out the Great Leap Forward that killed scores of millions of Chinese. They did not attempt to kill everybody with any appreciable education in Cambodia. They did not launch one aggressive war after another. They did not implement trade sanctions that killed perhaps 500,000 Iraqi children. In debates between anarchists and statists, the burden of proof clearly should rest on those who place their trust in the state. Anarchy's mayhem is wholly conjectural. The state's mayhem is undeniably, factually horrendous.
Nice. Love Hicks. Agorist Acres is out.
Peace.